Domenick Allen, a legend in show business, and I was delighted to get to speak to him last week.
Good Lord, I'm afraid to follow that introduction. Thank you, Alex.
Well, the reason I say that, you have one of the longest CVs in showbiz. You've done everything. You've done most shows, and you're an incredible talent and personality. Where did it come from? Because you were born in Scotland, weren't you?
Yes, I was born in Scotland into a show business family, the Logan family. My uncle was Jimmy Logan, and my aunt is Annie Ross. And when I was 3 years old, I was performing on stage in every show. And so for me, it was quite natural to be performing, and I'm more comfortable on stage than off stage. That's my world. And interestingly enough, in 125th Street, you know, there are backstage and front stage sequences. The story is that it takes place in the Apollo Theater in Harlem, but it's also about what happens backstage. And so the backstage life, not a lot of people get to really experience and see who aren't in the business. And I think that's one of the aspects of it that I find enjoyable to perform in, because I grew up in it.
Domenick, you've had huge success in theatre on Broadway, but you've also worked with some amazing people. Just reel off some names for us.
I've done everything from the Buddy Rich Band to Foreigner, the preeminent band of the 80s. And then I did Days of Our Lives, an American soap, for 2 years. And I was the featured performer in the Liberace show way back when I was much younger, in Las Vegas and actually all over the world. I actually was honored to play the London Palladium with Liberace, and that was a great treat.
What was it like working with him? I imagine never a dull moment.
Man, he was the most generous performer and person I think I've ever come across in show business. He was so kind. To give you an example, I was in the show for about 2 weeks. I wasn't married. I had my girlfriend with me, and he came in one night, knocked on my dressing room, and he said, Domenick, you know, my mother passed on about 6 months ago, and I know that you and Kathy need a break. We were working in Vegas then. He said, they want me to sell my mother's house, but I was thinking between shows, I'd take you and Kathy over to the house and let you see it, and if you like it, it's yours. And he sold me his mother's house for $1 with all of the furniture in it that he had designed and placed in there. That was the kind of person he was. And about 2 weeks after that, when I'd moved into the house, there was a knock at the door, and a piano delivery man was there, and he said, Mr. Allen, we have your baby grand piano. I said, I didn't order a piano. He said, no, this is from Mr. Liberace to help you in your music.
How easy did you find it to build that relationship with him?
What it wasn't was trying to buy friendship, like a lot of successful people try and do, because money to them is nothing. You know, he came from peasant stock, and he never forgot his roots. And he was just a kind person. He was a very intelligent person. When you look at what he did and his influence on today's entertainers, some who weren't even around when he was at his zenith. But you can see what he did with Elton John and a lot of people. You know, he had a great influence. He broke down a lot of barriers a long time ago. So he'd been through the business, he'd been through the mill, and I think he appreciated what he was given, and he tried to help other people.
I think he really was the epitome of showbiz, wasn't he, really? It was on stage. He was just how you imagined a star to be.
Yeah, I guess so. Off stage, he could be flamboyant, or if he was going shopping, he'd like to go shopping and like to Tesco's. And people would stop him for autographs there, and he'd say, no, this is the Liberace that shops, not the Liberace that signs autographs. And then other times he would stop and he'd sign autographs, and he was great. You know, I used to stand in the wings when I finished my show and learn from him and see how he held an audience in his hand and made them feel comfortable.
I was going to say, he was really the ultimate kind of person who could capture an audience and just take them on that journey of the dream that he had for his show, really. He could really grasp an audience and take them by both hands.
Well, you know what, Alex? So many times we go to a show, whether it's a musical or a concert, and the performer is looking at their watch, and you can tell they're silently counting the minutes down until they finish so they can go home and count their money or whatever they do. Liberace's show was not like that. 125th Street is not like that. We don't have huge opulent sets. We don't have helicopters, and we don't have cars, and we don't have fantastic costumes, although they're very colorful and very beautiful. But what we do have is, in a cast, a lot of talent and a lot of energy and spirit. And I was always taught, if you want the audience to enjoy themselves, let the audience see that you're enjoying yourself, and then they'll relax and enjoy themselves. And so that's what we try and do every night in the show. And I see a similar reaction in the 125th Street audience to an audience who would watch Liberace, for instance, because they sit there and they forget everything that's going on in the world. And for 2.5 hours, they're in our world.
It is incredible, and I said to Rob earlier that this is the ultimate feel-good show, really. It's the show that can make you distance from any problem you may have. You just sit there and are open-mouthed a lot of the time at the talent, and particularly people like you. This show has been specifically cast with people who are at the top of their trade, who have done it for a long time. This isn't a show for beginners unless they're really talented, and there are people who have very little experience in the show who have amazing talent, but it is purely about talent and how good you are. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's true. Not only the professionals, who some of them, this is their first West End credit, but then of course we have the amateur who comes up every performance. We have one amateur who performs every week, a different amateur every week, and then we also have an open mic at a specific point in the show when anyone at all can get up on a West End stage and sing their heart out. And you know, honestly, we've heard a couple of really incredible voices. Last night, for instance, there was a young lady who got up and she was incredible, deserving of an opportunity, you know? And so I think it's great because you keep the circle going. And the audience can be a part of something that is completely unique to that particular performance. It's something that they're not going to see in the next performance. Of course, you take your chance, and sometimes someone gets up and they sing completely out of tune. God bless them. Yeah, that's the way it goes. But the great thing is, it's alive. Everyone in the cast, whether they are completely experienced or their first time in a West End theatre, are full of spirit, and we have an ensemble team. We keep the ball in the air all the time and toss it to each other all the time.
The amateur part of the show, I would think, is quite brave from your point of view, and I think some directors and performers would deem it dangerous, because you are then crossing the boundary into real life, aren't you? You're kind of going from being the written word actor to being a personality and having to cope with whether they're good, they're bad, they're indifferent, whether they might speak, they might want to talk to you. It kind of crosses the boundary into proving that you are real people. A lot of actors can't cope with the not written word, if you know what I mean.
No, that's a very astute observation. That is true. Having grown up not only in the theater but in nightclubs and in rock and all that, for me, I love that feeling of being on the razor's edge of, uh-oh, are they going to say something at a turn? How am I going to be able to deal with it? I love that, because it's like playing tennis. They hit the ball to you, you have to hit it back. So there's an element of danger of who knows what's going to happen, and also we're able to ad lib and throw in a joke or throw in a line to make it happen, to make it work. So that's the fun part.
Domenick, thanks so much for sparing the time to talk to us.
Thank you so much, Alex, and to all of your listeners out there. Come and see us and come backstage and tell us that you heard this on the radio, and we'll be glad to meet you.